Part 2 of session 66. We still have a lot more healing here, so let the healing continue. So, like I said in the last video, this is one of the longest sessions that we have in the whole raw material. And you can even check in NNL Research YouTube the length of the sessions as they were recorded originally. You can see that this one approached the 2-hour mark. So we have a long discussion on healing. And I only want to recap something that is important to keep in mind here as we continue on talking on the mechanisms of healing. And that is that we have the concept of the healer. And the last question that I covered in the last video, question 10, Ra said that the healer doesn't heal. What heals is the self, the individual self, and the healer only works as a sort of channel for the light to be presented to the one to be healed. It is up to the seeker or the one to be healed to accept this light, to accept its new configuration of energy patterns as we would see here. And so with that in mind, we can understand that the one to be healed is the one that performs the healing. The healer is only providing that opportunity, that new configuration that the other one will see. And it will accept it or reject it, as it is the case. And it's the free will of the seeker or the one to be healed to obviously accept or reject it. So the healer does not heal in the means that it doesn't impose a new configuration. That would be a very negative way to approach healing. And it doesn't work. So with that in mind, we will continue on the next question, which is question 11. Don says, then seeking healing, a mind-body-spirit complex would then be seeking, in some cases, a source of gathered and focused light energy. This source could be another mind-body-spirit complex sufficiently crystallized for this purpose, or the pyramid shape, or possibly something else. Is this correct? Ra says, these are some of the ways an entity may seek healing. Yes. So, like I said, the healing, it's just presented by an external influence or phenomena, and it could be accepted or rejected, or it could be presented more directly by another healer. Obviously, for us, another self is a pure mirror. So for the open seeker, and with this I mean the person who has its faith open to truly accepting that healing, then it's better to seek healing from other people, in my opinion. For the one that is seeking, obviously, from the outside, from the external world, which is, again, a mirror of our minds. And Ra is going to say a little bit more, so I'm not going to get ahead of myself, but it's going to give, to me, the best source of healing. So, yeah, these are some of the ways like we explore in the pyramid, which, by the way, I may get into a little bit in this video. But the healing in the pyramid provides the same thing. It shows, I forget the exact wording, but Ra explained that in the healing chamber, in the king's chamber, this is where a new image of the self is presented to the seeker, to the one being healed. And it's up to the seeker to accept that image. It's presented in a way that it shows the perfection, the quality, the relatedness that is for the one to seek. It's not an arbitrary preconceived image of the self that is generated by some sort of entity. It's a pure reflection of the self. Now, if this sounds weird to you, I'll give you a very, very vivid example of how this image is presented to you all the time. You see, when people look at inspirational images, or they listen to inspirational messages, or just talk to a friend, as I said in the last video, and they present to you a view of yourself that you've never actually considered, or that you have considered but have rejected. Or it could be subconsciously saying like, yes, I am the universe. That sounds like, what I feel. But no, I just don't see it. So you're rejecting it. That's a form of healing. But you see, what I care about is that interaction that exists between the image presented and the reception of ourselves. So more vividly, even when you tell somebody, or you're being told by somebody that you're worth everything, you're a good person, you do this, you're kind, and so on. All these things resonate inside so purely that it causes an avalanche of emotions, sometimes depending on how strong the image is and how distorted the self-image is, that it causes this emotional reaction that we see in people crying and so on, because we're presented that image to them, or they are presenting it to us. So this is a form of healing as well, because it's doing the same mechanism. It's showing that light that we can recognize and say, yes, I know, I see it, I just somehow can accept it. So there is your work to see what it is that in your self-image you can accept it, because you're not worth it, because you're not beautiful enough, and I don't mean this physically or aesthetically, but just beautiful person. You consider yourself full of shame and so many other negative perceptions of the self. So all of this is healing, believe it or not. It's just a pure image of your own self in which everything is perfect as it is. Even accepting, as we will see in this video, even accepting illness, pain, problems in the body, whatever it is, accepting all of that as perfect. So let's go to question 12, where Don says, could you tell me the other ways that the entity could seek healing? Ra says, perhaps the greatest healer is within the self and may be tapped with continued meditation, as we have suggested. The many forms of healing available to your peoples each have virtue and may deem appropriate by any seeker who wishes to alter the physical complex distortions or some connection between the various portions of the mind-body-spirit complex thereby. So, what are the other avenues of healing? And Ra says that perhaps the greatest healer is within the self. I can't help but, so just to give you a little bit more of my language, there is a concession we have to make sometimes when speaking about separate entities, which is us in third density. However, for those who follow thoroughly into the true self, those of you who have a clear notion of what the pure self is, the absolute self, then things like this point out directly to what we know. What am I saying? That Ra says that the healer is within the self. And this can be obviously taken as me, the separate self, has something inside that causes the healing. But the truth is that the healing comes from the self. The healing comes from the recognition of the self. And this is why knowing the self is the ultimate answer to everything in reality. So this may be tapped in continued meditation. Why? Because the purpose of meditation is to commune with your true self. That self that is always present, that pure consciousness. So again, some of the language that we use, of course, needs to point out to the people who are in the beginning stages, or not even have considered that there is a absolute finite, infinite self, not finite, infinite self, which is us, which is everything, actually. So, concessions of language, of course. The many forms of healing available to your peoples each have virtue and may be deemed appropriate by any seeker who wishes to alter the physical complex distortions. So any form of healing will provide that. Even allopathic medicine, I would say, that has, of course, a role into providing a second opportunity for the self to continue exploring the self. This is what Ra mentions as one of the benefits of extending the life of people, regardless of their own consciousness or self-aware principle, how developed this may be, and how much meditation they actually do to commune with the pure self. So all of these are appropriate in different ways, of course, for the seeker who wishes to alter the physical complex distortions, that would be healing of the physical body, or some connection between the various portions of the mind-body-spirit complex, which can be understood as the classic healing that we know in metaphysics, at least within the law of one, which is the balancing and unblocking of the lower energy centers, red, orange, yellow. That connection with the different portions, I know people use this as in different ways, but the way this resonates the most to me in terms of energy centers and understanding our self in this view, in these lenses, is that the body is related to the three lower energy centers, like I said, red, orange, yellow. And then we have the mind between the heart and the throat chakra. That would be our mind and the way it perceives and it attracts and radiates. That's the mind. And then there is the spiritual complex, which is, to me, directly related to the indigo and violet ray, which is not to say that the mind doesn't get to the violet ray. It could be a portion of the mind getting there, as there are some connections, of course. There is, of course, a connection between the body and the mind, and that would be yellow and green as we know it. So there is a sort of, it's not like we can make an incision between these energy centers, but they're strongly related to that. And you can always see an overlap between energy centers, just like you can see an overlap in the colors, in the palette of colors, which is actually a circle and not a spectrum or a linear spectrum. So yes, this all of the different healings that are available, they all have a virtue of that are appropriate by whoever it is that is seeking it, in connecting these apparently disconnected portions of the mind, body, spirit, because it's always apparent, it's not real. It's only apparent for the balancing of it. So, question 13. In question 13, Don says, I have observed many activities known as psychic surgery in the area of the Philippine Islands. It was my assumption that these healers are providing what I would call a training aid, or a way of creating a reconfiguration of the mind of the patient to be healed, as the relatively naive patient observes the action of the healer in seeing the materialized blood, etc., then reconfigures the roots of mind to believe, you might say, the healing is done, and therefore heals himself. Is this analysis that I made correct? Ross says, this is correct. We may speak slightly further upon this type of opportunity. There are times when the malcondition to be altered is without emotional, mental, or spiritual interest to the entity and is merely that which has, perhaps by chance, genetic arrangement occurred. In these cases, that which is apparently dematerialized will remain dematerialized and may be observed as so by any observer. So, Let me reread this because it's kind of confusing actually to me, I'll confess, to discern the two types of healing that happen here with psychic surgery. So Ra says, we may speak slightly further upon this type of opportunity. First of all, Don is talking about the there is a sort of, I wouldn't even call it a scam or fake healing, because there is a pure element to this. So it's I don't have the point of view in which to call it anything, but there is a form of healing that provides an illusion to the healer, and we'll explore that. So that's exactly what Don is talking about, the healing performed in the Philippine island, and I even have an example for that, which you may or may not be familiar, depending on your age or your interest in what I would call specifically classic movies. Anyhow, Ross says, there are times when the malcondition to the altar is without emotional, mental, or spiritual interest to the entity, and is merely that which has... Okay, so yeah, Ross talking about the genetic arrangement that has happened in your body and could be healed. This is all just... they call it chance genetic arrangement, which is... could be any sort of mutation in your body because of the physical inertia that we have from our genetic material. So this can happen. In these cases, Ross says, that which is apparently dematerialized will remain dematerialized and may be observed as so by any observer. So if you have a growth in your body, which is genetic, it has no connection, like Ross says, to the mind, body, and spirit, right? They say mental, emotional, mental, or spiritual. There is no connection there. So you may be able to disintegrate this, to dematerialize it, and will remain like that. So this is possible. I'll continue reading and then I'll compare the two types of healings. Ross says, the malcondition which has an emotional, mental, or spiritual charge is likely not to remain dematerialized in the sense of the showing of the objective referent to an observer. However, if the opportunity has been taken by the seeker, the apparent malcondition of the physical complex will be at variance with the actual health, as you call this distortion, of the seeker, and the lack of experiencing the distortions which the objective referent would suggest still held sway. This is going to be admittedly difficult for me to unpack, but let's go one by one. So, in contrast now, the malcondition that has an attachment or a relationship with emotional, mental, or spiritual charge is likely not to remain dematerialized in the sense of the showing of the objective referent to an observer. This sounds to me as, you see, Don was talking about the apparent blood, because it's all fake surgery that is happening. It's all fake surgery that is happening. Like, you know, they do an incision that it feels like you don't get any pain, and suddenly they take something out and they show you blood, and then they clean it and it looks like they didn't do an incision. You know, so it's all, let's call it fake for now. And so if they do this, and there is an emotional, this makes sense, of course. If you have an attachment of what is being generated, or actually what's generating that malcondition, it's an emotional, mental, or spiritual charge, then it will remain like that, of course. The objective is likely not to remain dematerialized in the sense of the showing of the objective referent to an observer. That's what it means to me. However, if the opportunity has been taken by the seeker, the apparent malcondition of the physical complex will be at variance with the actual health, of the seeker and the lack of experiencing the distortions which the objective referent would suggest still held sway. So the way I can interpret this is that if the healed person sees this as an opportunity to say, I relieve that mental, emotional, if you know exactly what has been happening to you. I can only give you an example. Imagine that for some reason you know that your anger is causing something in your liver, and so you get one of these psychic surgeries, and you know already that it's your anger, but you still feel like you need this surgery, and they do it, and now you feel like that healed my anger. See, a new configuration of your mind has already taken place, and now you say, no, I went through this process of healing, so I'm not going to be triggered by these same things. Healing is happening at an inner self, but it is not happening from the person that did the fake thing, you see? So this is my interpretation. The wording here, I have to say, is quite complex. So this is how I see it, especially in the way that I know I can understand healing happens, and the question that Don had. So, okay, no, we actually have more. Hopefully, on the right track here. Ross says, for instance, in this instrument, the removal of 3 small cysts was the removal of material having no interest to the entity. Thus, these growths remain dematerialized after the so-called psychic surgery experience. So, this is the first example. Carla had 3 small cysts, and they were removed through psychic surgery, and they didn't come again because there was a new configuration, not a new configuration, I'm sorry. There wasn't any sort of configuration that was causing it, and that is just the genetic disorder that happens or occurs that causes the malcondition. They continue saying, in other psychic surgery, in other psychic surgery, the kidneys of this instrument were carefully offered a new configuration of beingness, which the entity embraced. However, this particular portion of the mind-body-spirit complex carried a great deal of emotional, mental, and spiritual charge due to the distorted functioning being the cause of great illness in a certain configuration of events, which culminated in the entity's conscious decision to be of service. So I'm not sure. I'm going to say, because they don't say it here, that the psychic surgery that she had on the kidneys was the one with Pachita, the legendary healer in Mexico, and not just the surgery that she had for kidneys, because you see, they're talking about Carla's conscious decision to be of service. So I'm not sure if this is also part of the healing that happened with Pachita, I have to admit, or if this is part of that moment when Carla was 13 years old, I believe, and she had a renal failure, and then she was healed by just allopathic. As far as I know, it was just our conventional medicine. So I'm not sure, but I'm confused. I really am confused because I don't know what they're referring to. But in any case, what's important here is that in the psychic surgery, a new configuration of beingness, this is really what matters. I mean, I'm trying to make a connection here with what I know in the history of Carla and so on. But what really matters here is that in this example, the psychic surgery, whatever it was that happened, you see, I'm going to be even... I don't know why I'm bothered by this, but I have to say it. I may even go as far to say that the psychic surgery at 13 years old, Carla, let me just say it, maybe I'm just off, doesn't matter. Psychic surgery could actually happen as well when Carla had that near-death experience. You see, I put my bets on that psychic surgery is actually possible because psychic surgery is just the offering of a new configuration. Psychic surgery happens in plant medicine ceremonies. See, there's nobody doing any fake stuff. There is a mental configuration that is offered again by the medicine, and people take it or not. And so I would wager that psychic surgery could happen in a near-death experience, which actually makes sense with this specific paragraph of Ra saying that this is what culminated in the entity's conscious decision to be of service. Carla has said that this is what actually what happens to her, and she decided to be of service after she said, okay, I don't want to die with this renal failure. I will accept this new opportunity to be of service. So psychic surgery, in my opinion, happened there. That's it. That's all I'm saying. But in any case, again, the only important part of this paragraph for practical purposes is that you are offered a new configuration of your mental image of self. Okay. So the last part of this answer, Ross says, therefore, any objective scanning of this entity's renal complex would indicate the rather extreme dysfunctional aspect which it showed previous to the psychic surgery experience, as you call it. The key is not in the continuation of the dematerialization of distortion to the eye of the beholder, but rather lies in the choosing of the newly materialized configuration which exists in time-space. Beautiful. So I think we're going to explore a little bit more that about time-space, and that is important. But okay, so they say here any objective scanning of the entity's renal complex, that would be physical, I suppose, like, I don't know, a CAT scan or X-ray or an echo, doesn't matter, or sonogram, I mean, would indicate the rather extreme dysfunctional aspect which it showed previous to the psychic surgery. So there are remnants of her dysfunction, her renal functions were impaired somehow, and we saw that in Carla in her history. The key is not in the continuation of the dematerialization of distortion to the eye of the beholder, meaning that the key is not to just fully heal physically the organ, but rather in the choosing of the newly materialized configuration that exists in time-space. So the example that I had here for the movie, if you remember, this was Man of the Moon by Jim Carrey, and it was the life of Andy Kaufman, a American comedian who it's a really good movie. You should go watch it if you're interested in this old. It's not a classic in and of itself, but it's just what should I call it? It's an underrated movie, maybe. Actually, it's not that great, to be honest. It's like, it's okay. In any case, so spoiler alert, if you want to skip this, I will go to question 14 after saying this. So go to the timestamp and skip this if you want to watch the movie. You have been warned. So skip, there's a timeline here that you can go and skip to question 14 or see in the chapters. And I think I've warned you enough if you're going to watch the movie. So, Man of the Moon, Andy Kaufman, Jim Carrey's interpretation. He dies at the end, and the psychic surgery that he goes into, and I believe it is in the Philippines as well. In the psychic surgery, he's seeing people go in, get healed fast, and get out, and so on. So he's putting all his hopes there. And then when he lies on the bed, I don't know if this happened to Andy Kaufman itself, but it's just the adaptation that was done for the movie. Then Andy looks and sees the fake parts where they see he sees that they're just grabbing something, from a little bowl of water that has blood and other things, and he sees the whole magician move of the surgeon, the psychic surgeon. And at that moment, you infer from there that he's like, I'm done. This is not what I was expecting. This is not real. And at that moment, he, of course, he dies. Not at that moment, but you can see that he realized that it was fake. Whereas maybe, and I'm not saying that he could have been healed by this, but maybe if he hadn't seen it, he would have been offered a new configuration. Just like I said, he would have been, maybe not a configuration here, but no, I don't think he would have been healed anyways, because it seemed like it was some terminal stuff that he wouldn't accept. But you can see this procedure going on. So yeah, let's move to question 14 and welcome back our friends who skip for the spoiler. So question 14, Don says, would you explain the last comment about the configuration in time-space? Ross says, healing is done in the time-space portion of the mind-body-spirit complex, is adopted by the form-making or etheric body, and is then given to the space-time physical illusion for use in the activated yellow ray mind-body-spirit complex. It is the adoption of the configuration, which you call health, by the etheric body in time-space, which is the key to what you call health, not any event which occurs in space-time. Beautiful. You see, first things first, root is important, first and foremost. So healing is done in time-space, always, because what we call the space-time manifestation of the body, this third density yellow ray mind-body-spirit complex, is just a manifestation of that. I've always seen it as a sort of projection of the time-space self that exists, which is potentially perfect in balance. So we come here to work those imbalances, to speed up the process of evolution. So healing, as we call it, in the physical body, happens when the new configuration in time-space is accepted. Now, before this keeps going into the abstract and gets very confusing, what we're saying is that the mind, when the mind accepts the new configuration through the processes that we talked about, health, then at that point, the body will heal. We don't have to have perfect physical health for that to have happen in time-space, you see? So it's all about accepting. They say it is the adoption of the configuration which you call health by the etheric body in time-space, which is the key to what you call health, not any event which occurs in space-time. Oh, another key ingredient here is the form-making or etheric body, higher self, or indigo ray, form maker body. This also helps to show that for people who say, oh, I would like to have my higher self, I'm going to talk to my higher self and so on. There is still this division in thought between the self, the apparent self, and the higher self. The higher self is that which you train to embody here. The higher self is always available. The higher self is present in you. It's only if you choose to use it in your day-to-day activities. And this is the training of the adept. The initiate seeks to bring the intelligence of the higher self. I call it higher intelligence. So as to not keep dividing selves here. So many selves. This is exactly what Gautama Siddhartha did. He said, let's do away with Atman, Jivatman, Brahman, and all of this. There's just one self. That's it. Let's not get too complicated here. People get confused with all of this, and then they say, will Jivatman become Atman? At what point? And so Buddha said, let's do away with all of this. So I will do the same and simply state that it is the higher intelligence, as you accept the new configuration of yourself, that which works in faith. That one is the one that accepts the healing and says, apply. Period. That's it. this becomes a lot easier as you begin to work from the single-pointed awareness of pure presence. And so its qualities of higher self starts materializing here. My friend Aaron Abke is doing a phenomenal work in terms of energetics, and he concludes that the higher manifestation that we can have here in third density is basically living through the higher self, embodying the higher self. And I agree with him in this regard, because this is what we show as we continue to do our work of embodying this pure presence of awareness, which is really the ultimate goal. And it's really my focus in the Law of One, simply to use all of this material to show you the way, in whichever way possible, using the language that we all love of Ra, to show you that it's the same language that Jesus used. It's only that this one is a lot more sophisticated, or that Buddha used, again, only that this one, again, is much more sophisticated and not so obscured in a language that doesn't belong to us, unfortunately. We are using a separation language, a language that was born out of materialistic science. So that's not to say that we cannot understand the language of the Buddha, of course. I love talking about it, so it is possible. But in any case, whichever language we use, I, in the end, use an eclectic approach to all of this, but that is my goal. Anyhow, okay, so this complex paragraph simply means that the healing is done in time-space, and it is adopted by the higher self, meaning that you have to have a portion of your higher self aware here within you to accept this. It's not as complicated as it seems. You don't have to do yoga to access your higher self. You don't have to do years of meditation and so on. This is simply the acceptance of faith, the acceptance of the heart, actually. So many ways I can paint this, but you get the point. Ra continues to say, in this process you may see the trans-dimensional aspect of what we call will. For it is the will, the seeking, the desire of the entity which causes the indigo body to use the novel configuration and to reform the body which exists in space-time. This is done in an instant and may be said to operate without regard of time. Yes, of course it does. It's instantaneous because it is your will. You see, just like it's you see, this is the power of consciousness. You can see a quasar and then see your finger at the same time. How does that happen? I thought the speed of light was the maximum speed that exists in the universe. No, consciousness has actually no speed. Consciousness is instantaneous. And so you can change your view of life in what seems to take years for some people in a flash, because you became conscious of it. You became conscious of the new configuration that tells you, I am not unworthy. I am not, whatever. Can't think of negative things right now, but I am not whatever I was told. You see, so you can see the trans-dimensional aspect of what we call will. Will is this narrowing of the focus of our attention to direct our path, our train of thought, our direction of the path. So that will, the seeking, the desire of the entity which causes the indigo body to use the novel configuration. The use of the will and faith are the most important things that are to be derived in any work in consciousness, in my opinion. So once again, this highlights the necessity of using our will. It's not about intellectually buying into it or getting into the emotional aspect of it and working with it, but just directing the will to that which you know that it is to be true. As long as you see it true, direct your will there, and everything else will unfold from it. So, The last part of this question or answer, Ross says, we may note that in the healing of very young children, there is often an apparent healing by the healer in which the young entity has no part. This is never so. For the mind-body-spirit complex in time-space is always capable of willing the distortions it chooses for experience, no matter what the apparent age, as you call it, of the entity. So, just the last example that Ra gives here, that the healing of young children seems to be performed by the healer, but this is not so. Again, this is our view that the only thing that exists is the brain and how it can intellectualize reality. And so children who are not able to intellectualize reality, of course, we're just speaking as children. See, children have, the only thing that children need from us is the passing of the baton in terms of the rules that we are playing with. This is a game. Life is a game. In children, they are so much closer to the pure light of awareness and its behaviors that the only thing that they need is the rules of the game here. You know, from do not cross the road haphazardly without looking, both ways, all the way to society works this way. And it is your job to find a way in which to live in society and give love to people, give love to yourself. These are the real educations. We don't need the years of indoctrination that we have in school, yes, to perform well in certain activities and so on and blah blah. Yes, we need, of course, yes, we need certain things, language and so on, but the true education comes from learning how to live with love. Is that possible? Is that even taught in school? No. So I'm not saying the school is not necessary, but we don't teach the most essential things. Let's put it that way. That's supposed to be in at home, and we know how dysfunctional our homes are, not even because of ourselves, but because of the attention that we have to pay to social matters and work and so many other distortions that exist out there. But again, I have nothing against all of that. It's just the potential value that we have with children. So yes, children have this inherent intelligence within themselves. So they it's not even the entity that itself, like the child who does it, it's the time-space portion of it. Just like you can say that an adult doesn't do the healing. It's never a separate self. The separate self doesn't exist. So what happens is that the information that is first greeted by the intellect goes deeper into the mind, which has no duality. And at that point, it lights up a light bulb, literally, and says, oh, yes, I need this, or I want this. So this happens regardless of age. It can happen with elderly people too. It doesn't matter. Because the first barrier, like I said, is the intellect. And once we pierce that, which in children doesn't really exist, there's no such intellect going on as a barrier. There may be questions and so on, but not the intellect, the strong intellect that we have to avoid these new configurations that are chosen or are offered to be chosen. So let's go to question 15. I really want to get into question 20 at least here. Don says, is this desire and will that operates through the time-space section a function only of the entity who is healed, or is it also the function of the healer, the crystallized healer? Ra says, we take this opportunity to say that this is the activity of the Creator. To specifically answer your query, the crystallized healer has no will. It offers an opportunity without attachment to the outcome, for it is aware that all is one, and that the Creator is known itself. So at this point, with everything that I've said, this makes total sense, because You see, when I was saying that the intellect greets the information first, and the intellect has, of course, the free will. This is how far we go into our expression, our manifested self, to say, no, that's nonsense. I don't believe in that. That's the intellect. So at the very surface of it, you reject it and say, nope. Or say, yes, that actually makes sense to me. So I will start working with faith and will, meaning that my will is directed to that which I perceive to be correct in me. And then you have the will directed there and the faith that this will work. So will and faith are important here. But you see, behind that, there is still a sort of trust, a sort of hope and expectation of it. Behind all of this, as the information goes deeper in and deeper into the roots of the mind, it's greeted by the Creator. The Creator is the one that does everything. The Creator is the one that once it's reached, once it's touched, just like the classic painting of man and God touching fingers, exactly that point. Was that Michelangelo? I forget. I'm really bad at knowing the authors of this classic artworks. Anyhow, so yes, it is the activity of the Creator. Now, to specifically answer the query, of course, the crystallized healer has no will, in the sense that it doesn't have a personal will. It has cosmic will. Just like cosmic will, you can see it as, I want you to be well. I want you to be okay because you are the Creator. This is cosmic will. You see, it's not like, well, I want you to be well because you fit perfectly here in our team, or because I need you, or because that's personal will. I mean, there is no will in that regard, but there's always a will that is the cosmic will. Christ consciousness, you can call it too. It offers an opportunity without attachment to the outcome. That is so, again, because the healer knows that the Creator is being expressed in that mind-body-spirit complex. And if it needs to go through a specific process, then you just let it be. The only thing you can do is offer that view of themselves for them to accept it or not. And that's it. It knows that all is one and that the Creator is known itself. That's a key part of it. The Creator is known itself. So you only offer it to the Creator and say, did you know that you are fine? That you are the Creator? And the intellect may accept it or reject it, thereby choosing to go deeper into the roots of the mind or simply avoiding it. So, question 16, Don says, then the desire must be strong within the mind-body-spirit complex who seeks healing to be healed in order for the healing to occur. Is this correct? Ross says, this is correct on one level or another. An entity may not consciously seek healing and yet subconsciously be aware of the need to experience the new set of distortions which result from healing. Similarly, an entity may consciously desire healing greatly, but within the being, at some level, find some cause whereby certain configurations, which seem quite distorted, are in fact at that level considered appropriate. So, quite simple. There are two levels, and what it does say specifically. The desire must be strong within the mind-body-spirit complex who seeks healing to be healed in order for the healing to occur. Yes, this is so. For the healing to occur, assuming that the healing is necessary. You see, because we as humans, and again, you can see the intellect and the separate self, the one that wants to preserve itself, because it will die. You can see that one saying, well, I want perfect health. Yes, that's a separate self. The absolute self has no regards for perfect health, but rather with the acceptance of everything that there is. Carla is a great example of this. She was seeking healing in so many ways, and eventually she realized that a lot of her distortions, her physical distortions, were actually placed there by herself so she can further her seeking. So this is what Ra means when they say that an entity may not consciously seek healing and yet subconsciously be aware or attracted to the need of experience the new set of distortions which result from healing. So the person may be attracted, although not consciously. You can see this as, people can call it fate. You can be, oh, it's fate that I have to go through this process of catalyst and so much catharsis of emotions, right? And you feel like, oh my God, I know I have to go through this, but I don't know why. That's consciously seeking, subconsciously seeking healing, because you planned this to yourself. There are things you cannot avoid, and that's why things happen to you suddenly, and all you need to do is accept it, because that's providing healing to you. We can even say that the whole purpose of third density is to heal yourself, right? If you heal yourself, meaning lower triad, red, orange, yellow, once that's healed, what happens? Fourth density, right? So if you are able to accept everything, your whole life as it is depicted right now, then you're accomplishing the purpose of third density. Now, in the other side, or on the other side, or another level, as Ra says, an entity may consciously seek the healing greatly, but they know within themselves that they need to have those configurations. So I'm throwing that in my bag of back pain. My back pain has been there for a long time. You know what? I just see it as it's just part of myself. My only problem is when I reject it as sort of painful. And what I do is just try to enjoy it, because there is a sort of relief when I do certain movements, and I just say like, okay, that's just like a little pleasure I have there waiting for me. Pain is pleasure awaiting some relief. Or pleasure, potential pleasure is the pain that I have there awaiting for relief. I don't know. It's the games that I play, it's the stories I tell myself. Question 17, Don says, I assume that the reason for assuming the distortions appropriate would be that these distortions would aid the entity in its reaching its ultimate objective, which is a movement along the path of evolution in the desired polarity. Is this correct? Oh, this is beautiful stated. Yes, this is correct. So, just to repeat what Don said here and analyze the correctness of this statement, Don says that the reason for assuming the distortions appropriate, this is the last one where you say, yep, my back pain is there, it's there to stay, whatever, is that these distortions would aid the entity in its reaching its ultimate objective. So my back pain, in the case that it is that, it may be healed after I release some sort of baggage, that I still have some emotional baggage. I really don't know, but there is a potential one, and I'll keep you updated if that happens. But that to me is it's to help me reach my ultimate objective. I don't know how. I just follow, what it does to me. And that ultimate objective is the movement along the path of evolution in the desired polarity, which is positive in my case. So it's aiding me somehow there. And that's how we see it. That's how we accept it. That's how we say, yep, that's there to help me evolve. Question 18, Don says, then in the case of an entity who becomes aware of its polarization with respect to service to others, it might find a paradoxical situation in the case where it was unable to fully serve because of distortions chosen to reach that understanding which it has reached. At this point, it would seem that the entity who was aware of the mechanism might, through meditation, understand the necessary mental configuration for alleviating the physical distortions so that it could be of greater service to others at this particular nexus. Am I correct in this thinking? Yes, the first portion of it seems a little bit unclear to me, actually. Let me reread it so I can be of better service to you who is listening. Then the case of an entity who becomes aware of its polarization with respect to service to others, okay, might find a paradoxical situation in the case where it was unable to fully serve because of distortions chosen to reach that understanding. Okay, I see. Yeah, at first it could sound like, why would I choose this? And at this point, it would seem that the entity who was aware of the mechanism might, through meditation, understand the necessary mental configuration for alleviating the physical distortion so that it could be of greater service to others at this particular nexus. Could it be alleviated? I'm not sure. Let's see what Ross says. Ross says, you are correct, although we might note that there are often complex reasons for the programming of a distorted physical complex pattern. In any case, meditation is always an aid to knowing the self. Yeah, I think what confuses me about Don's question here is that he's mixing, in my limited understanding, he's mixing okay, let's use Carla, right? Carla had a lot of issues, arthritis and renal issues, and let's focus on her arthritis. She often talked about this, and she said that she learned that this configuration was for her to know when to stop physical work and to go inside, to stay more within herself. This makes a lot of sense, actually, because if the vast majority of your service can be done through meditation or contemplative measures, this is your purpose here. You're a specialized being, and you have a very healthy body. You may be distracted, and you may not be within yourself. You will be running and going to parties and wasting your body in so many ways that, you're not being of best service, right? So Carla realized this and said, I work every day until the point that I can't work anymore. And if that takes me 2-3 days to recover, then she would take that time, and just be with herself. She wasn't saying, oh my God, I can clean the house. Oh, I can attend these meetings and so on. No, she was fine. She wrote books with just a couple of fingers that she could write very slowly. And she was fine with all of this, see? But Don seems to imply that once you realize this, you can, through meditation, understand the necessary mental configuration for alleviating the physical distortion so that you can be of greater service to others. I don't believe this is the case because you don't alleviate the distortions that make you be that perfect being here. What can happen, to give credit to Don, is that your mental configuration actually alleviates you see, let me give you two Carlas. One who was always stressed out because, my limitation, which she was. She actually stated in the 90s in book 5 that she was, it always caused her pain, mental pain, that she couldn't help more because of her physical distortions. You see, so that was alleviated through meditation, and she no longer, her physical body was not alleviated. What was alleviated was her mental charge, which we all have. We all have this mental pain. Ross says that we are characterized by emotional and mental pain in this density. And that is the unacceptance of that, because we always see a more ideal scenario. And my God, aren't we bombarded with ideals in this reality? And so every time we look at the mirror, we say like, I'm far from ideal. I'm not a perfect person. Oh, I'm not this. Oh, I could never be enlightened. All of these are blockages in your mind to keep you where you are. False modesty, I call it. So actually, okay, so what did Ross say? You are correct, although we might note that there are often complex reasons for the programming of a distorted physical complex pattern. So Don is correct in that. I would say, I don't know, maybe he's correct in everything, but I don't think so, because that's why Ross says, we might note that there are often complex reasons for the programming of a distorted physical complex pattern. The alleviation that I see comes always in the mental alleviation, to accept that, and not because Carla, for example, was able to heal her arthritis through meditation and disciplining the will. No. Some things are there to stay. They're part of your configuration. There's a reason why, you know, you have a skin color, and why you have a gender, and why you have a all kinds of prejudices and so on. All of these are there for you to have a sort of, and when I mean, I should say biases, inclinations towards something, not prejudices. But yeah, most importantly, Ra says, in any case, meditation is always an aid to knowing the self. So there's not enough praise for meditation, and I would emphasize it. Meditation is key, always. Question 19, Don says, is a vertical positioning of the spine useful or helpful in the meditative procedure? Ra says, it is somewhat helpful. I won't add much here, but that... Alright, I'm lying. I'll add something. First of all, Ra said, there is no better way to meditate, period. You can meditate in any way. However, the vertical position of the spine, which obviously is sitting meditation, zazen in Zen, is simply sitting and observing. It's helpful because, you see, one of the things that is helpful, especially for the beginner, is that you don't fall asleep easily. You can, but it's harder. And so it is a way for you to root yourself into the ground or cushion or whatever you're sitting. You're rooting yourself there. And it's almost like being in two places at the same time. Being in time space, if you will, as you simply sit there and observe your mind. Let it go, come back and forth. And at the same time, you're physically stable. You're physically there, sitting, whatever position you may want. But a vertical position of the spine means that. Standing, sure, you could do that too. But it seems more comfortable to just be sitting. See, it's not a penitence. It's these are the only two positions in which you can have a vertical spine, right? At least for meditation. So, question 20. Don says, I have a written question, two of them actually. The first is, would you please list the polarities within the body which are related to the balancing of the energy centers of the various bodies of the unmanifested entity? Oh God, what did I get into? Let's check really quick. Where are we? 20. Okay, so I'll cover two more questions, and there's a reason why I want to do that. So let's go. So, what is Don asking? Could you list the polarities within the body which are related to the balancing of the energy centers of the various bodies of the unmanifested self? It seems like a very deep question. Ross says, in this question there lies a great deal of thought, which we appreciate. Yes, it is possible that the question itself may serve to aid meditations upon this particular subject. Each unmanifested self is unique. The basic polarities have to do with the balanced vibratory rates and relationships between the first three energy centers, and to a lesser extent, each of the other energy centers. May we answer more specifically? So Ra actually loves this question, but it's saying like, oh, wait a second. We have a long conversation here. Do you want to talk more about this? And Don doesn't. He goes into another deep, probably deepest question. I mean, I wanted to cover these two questions because they are huge, but I don't have to cover them here, which is fine. Fine for me. We reached the hour already, so it's time to wrap it up. But this has to do with the polarities of within the body. And I would say that this is within not the physical body, but just the etheric body, or everything within the body, right? The body that wants to configure itself, to evolve. And so the polarities which are related to the balancing of the energy centers of the various bodies of the unmanifested entity. I really don't know what he means by polarities within the body, which are related to the balancing of the energy centers. That could be just the different types of polarities that exist in so many different aspects. That'd be physical, emotional, ethic, morality, everything. We have so many polarities in third density. We stink of polarity here. Okay. Of the unmanifested self, balancing the energy centers of the various bodies of the unmanifested entity. And this is where Don says, Ra says, so it is possible, the question itself, okay, the basic polarities have to do with the balanced vibratory rates and relationships between the first three energy centers and to a lesser extent, each of the other energy centers. So the basic polarities are all related, not all, but the vast majority are related to the lower triad, red, orange, yellow, the first three energy centers. That makes a lot of sense because you see, take a look at this. It is not only in third density that we have lower energy centers. We have lower energy centers in all densities. However, here is where it's manifested the most and it's exaggerated the most, as we have a full expression of this in the finite self, the human form. So the human form, you could even say, that is physically a manifestation of these three energy centers primarily. So the polarities involved in our incarnation are those which invite balance into it, invite healing into it. And appropriately, we've been talking about healing, so this goes perfectly fine with it. And this is the invitation here in third density. This is not what Ra is saying, but what I'm saying, extrapolating from this. Again, the basic polarities have to do with the balanced vibratory rates and relationships between the first three energy centers, right? So first, these three energy centers need to be crystallized in order for us to be polarized, right? That's just the work of third density. So the more you work on these three energy centers, this is why people who have spiritual escape mechanism or coping mechanisms, they stray away from the path by rejecting and ignoring the lower energy centers. You have to pay attention to that. God is manifesting in your lower energy centers. You are God. You're not trying to seek to become a light being that is... No, that is not you. You're enjoying all of this. So the way you balance all of this, and Ra has explained this perfectly before, saying that there is a stronger need within the adept to balance itself rather than to energize or activate even more higher energy centers. So pay attention to the lower ones and see to a lesser extent each of the other energy centers. Of course, because the variety that we have is expressed in the lower energy centers. So the variety, the beauty of the creation is expressed in third density, in my view. Fourth, fifth, sixth, seven, it's a little bit more dull in the sense that it deals with no veil and it deals with universal energies that are understood by everybody. All we're doing there is balancing what we already know and are learning to a certain extent in fifth density. So you see, the most important part for these basic polarities have to do, to me, with this third density expression of the self in the finite self, the human form. So yes, the other ones are there to work with the energy that is being provided. Let's put it this way. Fourth and fifth, and to some extent sixth energy centers, they work with the energy that is allowed by these three perfectly balanced, crystallized being of the lower energy centers. So whatever configuration you have, whatever you are that, literally, cliche as it might sound, that snowflake, that perfect snowflake. And you have to see it. You can't look at your snowflake and say, well, I don't look like that one. Oh, this one has better points. Oh, that one. No, you're perfect the way you are. It's a perfect geometry. And the more you see yourself that way, first, healing becomes automatic. Second, you no longer care about your separate self or your finite self. All right, if that wasn't enough, Don's next question is it's a huge one, but again, I won't cover it here. Not to the extent that it obviously is needed. For that, we have a whole book in the Law of One. Don says in question 21, possibly in the next session we will expand on that, meaning the last question. I would like to ask the second question. What are the structure and contents of the archetypical mind, and how does the archetypical mind function in informing the intuition and conscious mind of an individual mind-body-spirit complex? Ross says, you must realize that we offer these concepts to you so that you might grow in your own knowledge of the self through the consideration of them. We would prefer, specifically for this latter query, to listen to the observations upon this subject, which the student of these exercises may make, and then suggest further avenues of the refinement of the inquiries. We feel we might be of more aid in this way. So this is the first time we talk about the archetypical mind as it relates to the informing of the self and the study of this vast topic. So, how does the archetypical mind function in informing intuition and conscious mind? We didn't have enough room in book 4 because the channeling ended, and we barely touched the surface on the archetypical mind. But we have enough to talk about it, and we'll get to that. So this only shows, and I'll end the video with this, this only shows the desire of Ra to work as a student teacher with Don, and of course Carla and Jim, and every one of us actually, but to show that, you know, you ask me a question, then I answer. You ask me a question, and in this specific part, of course, this is the relationship of dialogue. You know, the student comes with a question, the teacher answers it, and poses a new question for the student to digest, to ruminate on. And this is the process which Ra and Don took over in book 4, which we'll eventually get to. And I am pleased to have actually a good friend of mine who is simply incredible at the tarot and astrology. It's just something out of this world. And she is, she speaks Spanish, no English, I'm sorry. So maybe in the future, when I do some collaborations with her, I will do translations of subtitles and so on, so you can listen to this incredibly talented woman. I've never seen anybody tackle the tarot and astrology this way. It's like her natural language. So I'm pleased to know that I have somebody of this level in which to actually study the tarot with, and offer you, of course, the best I can get. So this is the end of part 2. We still have, believe it or not, like 13 more questions, which I will cover in the next video. Conclusions, it's all about healing, right? And even the last question, or the second to last question, related to that in terms of the energy centers and how we have basic polarities in ourself that are influencing our perception and the proper balance and future balance of our lower energy centers. It's all about our finite self. You see, it's a very important tool That's the reason why we have it. A lot of people say, well, if I'm the creator, why did I incarnate in this human form, this imperfect human form, and so on. I'm so upset. Well, the truth is that this is the expression that you want to see of yourself. It's almost like saying, if I'm the creator, why am I suffering all this much? Well, because you don't know that you're the creator yet. Simple as that. If you are the creator, you wouldn't suffer. But the finite self is the one who suffers and says, if I'm the creator, why do I suffer? You see, it's a very subtle distinction. So our purpose here is to simply accept that which is. You have to be very keen in your observation to see when is the separate self creating a story in which it is a victim of, and then obfuscating the potential release of energy so you can heal yourself, whether that be physically or mentally. Like I said, it's all about how you perceive and accept reality. Everything that is needed is just to see your life as a projection of your mind, and with that projection you can see yourself where you are not merging with reality. What are you rejecting of the outside world? That's what you're rejecting of yourself. Simple as that. There's nobody inside you, there's nobody outside you, it's only you, and the way you perceive reality is the mirror of your mind. So it's a great tool. Because whenever you see, I can't accept this, that's potential healing. Healing is the merging, the dissolution of the finite self into unity with everything else. It makes all the sense in the world. Separation causes illness. Unity causes healing. Physically, mental, and spiritually. That's the end of my rant here. Thank you so much for being with me for another session, for another third of this session rather. And I have nothing else to say but to be grateful for your continued support in every avenue that I open. I'm doing a lot of things. I gotta be honest, at this point, I'm working a lot with the Spanish community because there is a greater affluence of people there, and I would like to do the same in English, but I don't see that much people interested yet in my work. So it is what it is. I will continue to work with the Spanish population. I do appreciate all your comments and your interest with me. If you're interested, of course, always contact me through an email. You can find that if you're savvy on the internet. You can find my email. Join my email list so you can also be informed of what I'm doing if you're interested, especially if you're interested in working with me in the same way I'm doing with my Spanish audience, which I'm really grateful for because I'm learning so much from them and I'm teaching so much to them that it just helps me and them grow together. So that's it. Thank you again. I love you, and I'll see you in part 3 and final of session 66.